was having a conversation with one of my players the other day, and interesting, man. We were out for breakfast and stuff, and I got a couple notes here to keep me in line.
Yep.
So started off with because he's known some of the players that I've trained, and like even at like when I was in Detroit, knew some of the players there, and his question to me was, "Hey, Andy, why like?" He named a player. He goes, "Why do you think that guy didn't make it? Or why did this guy make it over this guy? Or did you ever see this guy make it? Like, how come? Like, it's weird, eh?" And I go, "Yeah, it's weird, but it's there's different reasons, right?" And so, like, one of the things was, first of all, so and it goes back to a lot of conversations we had before. Just because someone was good at 14 or 15 doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be good at 17 or 19. Just because someone is a really good, like we were talking about this in our office the other day, is it's funny to see how, people project someone that just gets points or is dominant at midget. And then if they get drafted to the OHL or college or something like that, the game doesn't translate, right?
I was just about to use that word.
Yeah, it just doesn't translate for some reason. It's the game doesn't, the game that they play in midget doesn't transfer into junior well. Right? Or their body stops or they peak, right? The guys that play really good in junior, like you'll see this all the time, right? Like my son was asking me the other day, "Hey, whatever happened to David Levin?" So he was a first overall pick to the Sudbury Wolves, I think maybe 2012, maybe earlier than that. First overall pick. And I said, you know what? I not much. Like he did a little bit of pro stuff. So I ended up playing in Europe a little bit, right? Nothing major. First overall.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh," so Charlie's like, "Wow, that's what happened?" I said, was it a bullshit pick?" I said, "No, at the time he was the number one rated guy, and he had a decent junior career, nothing spectacular, but there's a guy that his game didn't translate from midget to major junior hockey."
Yeah.
So could it have been his skating? No, his skating was excellent. His skill set was excellent. So maybe there was a mental block. Maybe he didn't know how to get along in a room, and all these different things translate.
Yep.
And it's the same thing happens in junior to pro. There's guys that you look and we talk about this all the time. Like really, that guy made it, or that guy's didn't only had 15 points one year in junior. It's like, yeah, because now you're taking roles, you're taking different positions, you're taking different needs for teams and a quality that maybe doesn't look as good in junior translate into a pro level. So there's a lot of things that could happen on why someone doesn't get to the next level, right?
Yeah.
And then it could be also sometimes there's a circumstance, like maybe they've peaked, and maybe there's a circumstance which will bring me to the actual next point where they didn't know how to get through. Like maybe it's they didn't get ice time their first year, and it was just a really frustrating thing, and they just didn't know how to get through that.
Yeah, they couldn't battle back from that one. Yeah,
couldn't battle back. Like just one of those things where it was like an event or a thing that was like hitting a brick wall, right?
Yep.
So that's what brings me to my next point is you got something?
I was just going to cut in for a bit.
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead.
Want to breathe?
You go ahead. No, go ahead.
Because I wanted to talk about that translatable thing, right? Because
Okay.
I don't know if you're going to revisit that again later, but that's one that people don't really understand. People don't understand that, and I didn't really understand it until you taught me about it. Actually, that's the reason why I learned about it. Is you can have a kid. We were talking about one kid the other day. He's having a great year in the OHL right now, and he's a very good player. But what I always, one of my favorite things to ask you, which is it's just like pure speculation because you can't really know, but it's like, do you think that kid could play in the NHL or whatever? And it's just fun to do the thought experiment of why they might or might not be able to, right? And this one kid that we were talking about, I think yesterday,
it was
really good player, but we just don't see it happening in the NHL. And for this guy, so he's got a ton of points this year. He plays a pretty gritty style game, but he's not super tough. He just plays gritty. So he's got a little bit of quickness, but he digs in the corners. He can make plays. But he's not the best. He's not the best skater. He's not the best stick handler. He's not the best shooter. He's not the best at anything. He's just good at everything.
Yeah.
And he can weasel his way around through the corners, and he's a little bit slippery and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when we take all of those factors into consideration, can you plug in him playing that style for the Detroit Red Wings?
Right.
And the way that he plays, if he keeps that exact same way of playing, we don't think it would be enough for him to get over the
Yeah,
hill
I don't think so.
to make it happen consistently
Yeah.
in the NHL.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about with that translatable, where you could get a guy that doesn't have nearly as many points,
Yeah.
but maybe he's a big, strong kid that plays on the wing.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, he's not going to be an offensive player in the NHL, but he could be a really good PK guy, or he
Yep.
could be a really good shutdown third line or fourth line guy.
Yep.
So even though this other player seems to be dominating in junior right now and having a fantastic year, you could have this other guy that doesn't have nearly the same points,
Yeah.
but for an NHL team or an NHL scout look, and they're like, yeah, I can see that body, or I can see that style of play on our team in this position.
Yep.
Right. And that's kind of the translatable thing. And people don't see that. It's just kind of like, oh, he's dominating in the OHL. He's for sure going to be NHL guy, you know,
Yep.
and because people don't really know how to gauge that type of play.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So that's
It's
a
like
really,
you take
really
a,
interesting thing.
Take a look at a goalie, right? So you
Yep.
might get a goalie that gets to play junior or college, and I don't know a whole lot about goalies. That's one thing I just know it was 30 shots and it was they won the game and there was only 0 or 1 goal scored.
Yeah.
He probably had a pretty good game. But like you take a look at a goalie, a kid's kicking pucks, and you see this a lot of the kids. Well, here's another example. You take a lot of kids that play for the Canadian national junior team and the World Juniors. You think that, okay, these are supposedly the best players in Canada, and they are kind of sort of, yeah. But there's very, very small percentage of those players play in the NHL, let alone be great NHLers.
That's right.
You know, like everyone will say, oh, McDavid was, you know, and they go through the list. There are guys, but most of those guys aren't NHLers.
Mm-hmm.
So the translatableness to get to the pro levels, like the NHL level, anyways, is it's a different ballgame, right? And then it also shows you how hard it is to get to the NHL and stay there.
Sorry, I want to punch that again. The Team Canada thing is such a freaking good example, because you think, here's the World Juniors. These are the best junior players in Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Or guys from school. Like anyone from Canada can be on the World Junior team.
That's right.
Right?
College
anyone that was
junior,
born, right?
Yeah.
And most of them, once you get outside maybe their top 5 players, let's say, if I had to make a guess, maybe this is wrong, but if I had to make a guess, you get outside the top 5 players on that team, not so sure if they're going to be guys that stick in the NHL or not. And you could get how many kids that never play a game at the World Juniors, and they're like established NHL
100%.
players for 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so different, and people don't think that. Like, they think about World Juniors like these guys are shoo-in NHLers. Like, these guys are playing in the NHL. And that's probably part of the reason why they get such great crowds, because you think this is like the best of the best. Like, this is the future of hockey, right? These kids are the future of hockey.
Things. It's the worldwide thing. It's the future of hockey. It's the Christmas time tradition and all that stuff. And to be fair, it's the only big in Canada. Did you know that?
Yeah, I know.
No one in the world cares about the junior tournament.
I know. So funny.
It's marketed by TSN, and you think it's the greatest tournament in the world, and it is. Yeah. But it isn't.
Yeah, that's probably why it's most of the time it's hosted in Canada.
Yeah. Right? No, that's exactly it.
Anyways.